The massive crystal chamber buzzed with the sounds of 847 different species. Ambassador Han Sol Kim walked through the entrance, his black diplomatic uniform stark against the rainbow of alien forms around him. Behind him came Captain Lee Da-eun in her military dress blues and Dr. Park Ji-woo carrying a tablet full of cultural notes. Han Sol had been coming to these peace talks for 6 months now. Every day, the same arguments. Every day, the same dismissive looks from the alien representatives. Today felt different, though. Today felt final. The Galactic Council chamber was beautiful, Han Sol had to admit. The walls pulsed with soft, bioluminescent light that translated every word spoken into every known language. The floor was made of some kind of living crystal that shifted colors based on the mood of the speakers. Right now, it showed mostly cold blues and grays. The human delegation will now present their final proposal, announced the mechanical voice of the Council's AI system. Han Sol stood and walked to the center of the chamber. Around him, hundreds of alien eyes watched. Some with curiosity, most with boredom, and far too many with barely hidden contempt. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, Han Sol began, his voice calm and steady. The Terran Federation respectfully requests full membership status in this council. We ask for equal voting rights, unrestricted colonization privileges, and fair trade agreements. A sound like grinding metal came from the Kralian section. High Chancellor Morgoth rose from his stone seat, his massive form casting shadows across the crystal floor. The humans make the same demands as always, he rumbled in his deep voice. They have been members for 200 years, yet they still act like children wanting more toys. Laughter rippled through several alien sections. Han Sol kept his face neutral, but Captain Da-eun noticed his hands clench slightly behind his back. Counselor Vexathera floated up from the Zephyrian area, her energy form crackling with blue light. The Kralians speak truth, her voice echoed, in everyone's minds. Humans are barely evolved primates. What have they contributed to our great civilization? Their crude technology, their primitive art, their barbaric military tactics. More laughter. Dr. Ji-woo made a note on his tablet, adding it to the hundreds of other dismissive comments he had recorded over the months. Ambassador Lysina from the ethereal delegation spoke next, her voice like wind chimes. While the humans show potential, they clearly need more time to mature as a species. Perhaps in another 1,000 years they might be ready for full membership. Han Sol had heard all of this before, the same words, the same tone, the same assumption that humans were somehow less than the other species. He looked around the chamber, seeing the faces that had become familiar over months of negotiations. The Zephyrians, who thought their energy-based technology made them superior to all matter-based life. The Kralians, whose ancient civilization predated human history by millions of years. The Ethereals, who claimed to have transcended physical existence, but still somehow needed physical meetings to make decisions. And dozens of other species, all united in one thing, their belief that humans didn't belong at the same table as them. We have been generous, continued Morgoth. Allowing humans into the council at all was an act of charity. You should be grateful for what you have received. Captain Da-eun shifted slightly in her seat. As a military officer, she had seen how human troops fought alongside alien forces. She had watched human medics save alien lives. She had witnessed human engineers solve problems that had stumped alien experts for decades. Yet none of that seemed to matter here. Vexathera's energy, form pulsed brighter. Human technology is functional but crude. Human art is quaint but primitive. Human military strategies are effective but barbaric. You bring nothing new to our civilization. Dr. Ji-woo looked up from his tablet. As a xenobiologist, he had spent years studying alien cultures. He knew that humans had introduced new concepts to dozens of species. Human music had influenced melodian composers. Human literature had inspired thought-weaver philosophers. Human medical techniques had saved millions of alien lives. But pointing this out would be useless. The council had made up their minds long. Before these talks began, Han Sol let the criticism wash over him. He had expected this. For 6 months, the pattern had been the same. Human proposals would be dismissed. Human achievements would be minimized. Human requests would be denied. The human proposal is rejected, announced Morgoth with finality. These talks will continue next week, where perhaps the humans will present more reasonable requests. The crystal floor shifted to darker colors, reflecting the dismissive mood of the chamber. Several alien representatives were already standing to leave, considering the matter closed. Han Sol remained standing in the center of the chamber. The noise of departing aliens gradually quieted as they noticed he hadn't moved. Ambassador Kim, prompted the AI system. Do you have a response to the Council's decision? Han Sol looked around the chamber one more time. He saw Vexithara's smugly pulsing energy form. He saw Morgoth's impatient expression. He saw the dozens of other representatives who barely considered humans worth their time. The Terran Federation formally withdraws from these proceedings, Han Sol said clearly. His voice carried to every corner of the chamber. We request a recess to reconsider our position within the Galactic Council. A few alien representatives chuckled. Morgoth's expression showed amused tolerance. Very well, he said. Take your time, Ambassador. We will be here when you return to accept more reasonable terms. Vexithara's mental voice carried mockery. The children are having a tantrum. They will be back within days, begging for whatever scraps we choose to offer. Han Sol nodded politely. Thank you for your time, honored council. He turned and walked toward the exit. Captain Da-Un and Dr. Ji-Woo fell into step behind him. As they reached the chamber doors, Han Sol paused and looked back once more. Good luck with your future endeavors, he said simply. The three humans left the chamber together. Behind them, alien voices buzzed with amusement and dismissal. Several representatives made jokes about human pride and stubbornness. None of them noticed the slight smile on Han Sol's face as the doors closed behind him. None of them saw the confident set of Captain Da-Yun's shoulders. None of them observed Dr. Ji-Woo's satisfied expression as he closed his tablet full of documented prejudice. In the corridor outside, Captain Da-Un spoke quietly. The ships are ready, Ambassador. Han Sol nodded. Send the signal. Operation Homecoming begins now. Dr. Ji-Woo looked back at the closed chamber doors. They have no idea what they just lost. No, agreed Han Sol, but they will. The three humans walked away from the council chamber for the last time. Behind them, 847 alien species continued their discussions, confident that the humans would return soon, desperate and willing to accept whatever terms were offered. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Dr. Yang So-young stood in the medical bay of Kepler Station, watching her team pack their equipment. The alien doctors around them continued their work, barely noticing the humans preparing to leave. After 3 years of working together, the Zephyrians and Melodians had grown used to having human medical staff around. Dr. Yang, called out a Melodian nurse, her musical voice carrying worry. Are you really leaving? What about the emergency protocols you helped us develop? Yang smiled gently. I'm sure you'll manage fine without us. You're all very capable doctors. The Melodian's face showed confusion. Yang had been the head of emergency medicine for the entire sector. Her quick thinking and creative solutions had saved thousands of lives. The treatment protocols she developed were used across 12 different star systems. But Yang had received her orders 3 days ago, just like every other human medical officer in galactic space. Return home immediately. No exceptions. On the other side of the galaxy, engineer Kim Tae-hyun was having a similar conversation with his alien co-workers. He stood next to the massive fusion reactor that powered New Geneva Colony, his tools already packed and ready for transport. But Tae-hyun, said his Kralian supervisor, stone features showing rare emotion. You designed half of these systems. Who will maintain them when you're gone? Tae-hyun shrugged. The manuals are all in the computer. Everything is clearly labeled. Your people built amazing things before humans came along. I'm sure you'll figure it out. The Kralians' confusion was obvious. Humans had been maintaining galactic infrastructure for decades. They worked in dangerous conditions that other species avoided. They solved problems that stumped alien engineers. They improved systems that had worked the same way for thousands of years. But now, they were all leaving, quietly and without fanfare. Admiral Cho Min-ho stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Incheon, watching the tactical display. Red dots showed pirate activity along the outer rim. Yellow dots marked border conflicts between member species. Green dots indicated human fleet positions throughout galactic space. "Admiral," reported Captain Baek Dong-wook from the communication station. "We're receiving the usual requests for assistance. The Hegemony wants help with raiders near Proxima 7. The Trade Federation is asking for escort duty through the Nebula Passage." Cho Min-ho nodded. "Send polite responses. Inform them that Terran fleet assets are currently unavailable for external operations." "All of them, sir?" "All of them." Across the fleet, human ships began their long journey back to Terran space. They left behind alien forces that had grown dependent on human tactical support. Human officers had been serving as advisors to alien militaries for generations. Their flexible thinking and innovative strategies had become essential to galactic defense. But not anymore. Director Nam Hye-jin sat in her office on the Cultural Exchange Station orbiting Harmony Prime. Around her, representatives from dozens of species worked on art projects, musical compositions, and literary works. The station had become the cultural heart of the galaxy, where different species shared their creativity. Most of them didn't realize that 60% of the station's most popular works had human involvement. Human artists collaborated with alien creators. Human writers helped translate concepts between species. Human musicians found ways to blend different sonic traditions. "Director Nam," said a Thoughtweaver poet, its crystalline form shimmering with concern, "I received notice that the Human Cultural Exchange Program is ending. Is this true?" Nam smiled sadly. "I'm afraid so. All human cultural programs are being terminated effective immediately." "But why?" "The Festival of Worlds is next month. The Harmony Symphony premieres next week. The Interspecies Literature Prize ceremony is in 3 days. Humans are involved in all of these projects." "I'm sorry," Nam said simply. "Those projects will have to continue without human participation." The Thoughtweaver's crystal form dimmed with distress. It had been working with human poet Lee Kyung-soo for 2 years on a new form of verse that combined Thoughtweaver resonance patterns with human emotional expression. The work was revolutionary, unlike anything either species had created alone. Now, Lee was gone, recalled to Earth like every other human artist in the galaxy. Back on Kepler Station, the first emergency came just 2 days after Dr. Yang's departure. A transport ship carrying ethereal diplomats suffered a reactor breach near the station. The alien medical team rushed to treat the radiation poisoning, but their traditional methods weren't working. "We need Dr. Yang," said the Melodian nurse, frantically. She developed the treatment protocol for mixed-species radiation exposure. The chief medical officer, a Zephyrian energy being, crackled with frustration. "Dr. Yang is gone. We'll have to figure this out ourselves." But they couldn't. The treatment required a deep understanding of how different alien biologies reacted to human-designed medical technology. Yang had spent years developing the hybrid approach that combined the best of multiple medical traditions. 3. Ethereal. Diplomats died that day. It was the first hint of what was coming. On New Geneva Colony, the fusion reactor began showing stress fractures in its containment field. The automated systems triggered emergency protocols, but the repairs required someone who understood both the original Kralian design and the human modifications that had improved its efficiency by 30%. "The instruction manuals are incomplete," reported the lead Kralian engineer to his supervisor. Engineer Kim modified these systems extensively. "The documentation only covers the basic operations." The supervisor's stone face showed growing concern. Kim had improved dozens of systems throughout the colony. His modifications were elegant and effective, but they required a human understanding of problem-solving to maintain properly. They managed to stabilize the reactor, but it was operating at reduced capacity. Power brownouts began affecting the colony's industrial sectors. Similar problems were emerging across galactic space. On mining stations, human engineers had been maintaining equipment in conditions too dangerous for most other species. In deep space, human technicians had been running systems that required constant creative problem-solving. Without humans, efficiency began dropping. Maintenance schedules fell behind. Equipment failures increased. The Galactic Council noticed. None of this at first. They were too busy congratulating themselves on standing firm against human demands. Counselor Vexathara had even made a public statement about the temporary absence of our junior partners and how it proved that the galaxy could function perfectly well without human involvement. High Chancellor Morgoth agreed publicly, though privately he was beginning to receive concerning reports from Kralian colonies. Minor equipment failures, delayed maintenance schedules, small problems that seemed insignificant individually. Ambassador Lysina was the first to voice concern during a council session 3 weeks after the human withdrawal. "Has anyone else noticed the decrease in efficiency reports from various sectors?" she asked during the daily briefing. Most representatives dismissed her concerns. The hegemony's speaker insisted that any problems were temporary adjustments. The Trade Federation's representative blamed normal equipment cycles. But Lysina had been studying the patterns. Medical emergency response times had increased by 15%. Infrastructure maintenance completion rates had dropped by 20%. Cultural event attendance was down 30% across the galaxy, small numbers individually, significant when viewed together. "Perhaps," she suggested carefully, "we should consider reaching out to the humans, not to negotiate, but simply to understand their timeline for returning to normal operations." The suggestion was met with dismissive laughter from most of the council. Vexathara's energy form pulsed with amusement. "The humans are having their tantrum," she projected to the assembly. "They'll be back soon enough, willing to accept whatever terms we offer. Desperation makes excellent negotiators." But 3 months had passed since the withdrawal, and there was no sign of human desperation, no messages requesting renewed negotiations, no indication that humanity was struggling without galactic membership. In fact, the few reports coming out of human space suggested the opposite. Terran colonies were thriving. Human trade with non-council species was increasing. Human scientific research was accelerating without the restrictions of council oversight. Ambassador Lysina made another note in her private files. The galaxy was starting to feel the absence of humanity, even if no one wanted to admit it yet. And this was only the beginning. The crisis began on a Tuesday morning in the Corvin system. Captain Bayek Dong-wook, formerly a council liaison officer, now sat in his quarters aboard the human cruiser Sol, reading the urgent messages flooding in from across the galaxy. Each message told the same story: systems failing, operations stalling, and no one understanding why. 3 months had passed since humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council. What had started as minor inconveniences was now becoming a full crisis. The first major breakdown happened at the Zelthian Trade Hub, the busiest commercial station in the galaxy. For decades, human traders had served as neutral intermediaries between species that refused to deal with each other directly. The Kralians still held ancient grudges against the Zephyrians from wars fought millions of years ago. The Ethereals considered most physical species too crude for direct business dealings. Without human merchants to bridge these gaps, trade routes that had operated smoothly for generations suddenly collapsed. "I will not negotiate with those energy parasites," declared the Kralian trade minister, his stone features showing deep disgust as he glared at the Zephyrian representative across the negotiation table. The Zephyrian's energy form crackled with anger. "Stone-minded fool. Your species was building mud huts when we mastered the power of stars." The argument escalated quickly. Within hours, both sides had withdrawn their ships from the trade hub. Similar scenes played out across dozens of commercial centers. Species that had traded peacefully for centuries suddenly remembered old grievances without human diplomats to smooth over the tensions. Researcher Oh-Mi Young read the emergency message 3 times before accepting what it meant. The archaeological expedition to the artifact worlds had been suspended indefinitely. Without her expertise in cultural pattern recognition, the team couldn't make sense of the newly discovered ruins. O had spent 5 years developing a unique approach to xenoarchaeology. She combined human intuition with alien analytical methods, finding connections that pure logic missed. Her techniques had led to breakthrough discoveries about the galaxy's ancient civilizations. Now the expedition team was stuck. The artifacts contained writing systems unlike anything in the galactic database. The architectural patterns followed. No known design principles. What should have been the discovery of the century had become an unsolvable puzzle. "We need Oh-Mi Young," the expedition leader, a thought weaver named Crystal's Song of Memory, transmitted back to the university. "Her pattern recognition abilities are essential to this work." But O was back on Earth, working on purely human archaeological projects. The galactic scientific community would have to solve their mysteries without human insight. The military situation grew worse daily. General Yoon Seung-ho monitored the reports from his command center on Luna Base, watching as Council forces suffered defeat after defeat against enemies they used to handle easily. The Crimson Fleet, a group of pirates that had been a minor nuisance for years, had suddenly become a major threat. Without human tactical advisors, the Council forces fell back on traditional strategies that were centuries old. The pirates, however, had learned from watching human military techniques, and now used those same flexible tactics against their former teachers' allies. Conventional formation attack against suspected pirate stronghold, read one military report. Result: complete failure. Enemy forces scattered before engagement, then regrouped behind our lines using asteroid cover. 12 ships lost, 0. Enemy casualties. Yoon shook his head. The Council forces were fighting like they had for thousands of years. Rigid formations, predictable strategies, and overwhelming force. It worked well against enemies who fought the same way. But the pirates had watched human forces adapt and improvise, and now they used those lessons against the galaxy's traditional military powers. Mediator Song Jae-sung received the emergency call while working in his garden outside Seoul. A border dispute between the hegemony and the Trade Federation had exploded into armed conflict. 3-star systems were now battlegrounds, and civilian casualties were mounting. For 20 years, Song had specialized in resolving conflicts between alien species. His approach combined human empathy with alien logic, finding solutions that honored both species' needs. He had prevented dozens of wars through patient negotiation and creative compromise. The current conflict had started over mining rights to an asteroid field. Simple economics should have resolved it quickly. But without a neutral mediator who understood both cultures, small disagreements had grown into major grievances. Both sides are demanding complete surrender from the other, the emergency message explained. Traditional hegemony honor codes prevent backing down. Trade Federation profit calculations show any compromise as unacceptable loss. Military escalation continuing. Song looked at his garden, where earth flowers grew alongside plants from a dozen alien worlds. Once, those different species had grown in harmony through careful cultivation and understanding. Now, across the galaxy, that same harmony was breaking down. The economic collapse accelerated as trade wars erupted between former partners. Species that had cooperated for centuries suddenly found themselves unable to work together without human intermediaries. The Melodians refused to export their healing crystals to anyone who traded with the barbaric Kralians. The Kralians cut off mineral shipments to anyone dealing with the parasitic Zephyrians. The Zephyrians restricted energy technology access to punish their trading partners. Prices for basic goods skyrocketed. Medical supplies became scarce as supply chains broke down. Food shipments stopped reaching colonies that depended on interspecies trade. The galactic economy, built on cooperation between species that normally hated each other, began falling apart without the human glue holding it together. Environmental disasters struck next. The terraforming project on New Harmony suffered catastrophic failure when its atmospheric processors overloaded. The human engineering team that had designed the safety systems was gone, and the alien technicians couldn't understand the complex backup protocols. New Harmony's atmosphere turned toxic within days. 2 million colonists had to be evacuated to overcrowded refugee ships. The evacuation fleet, designed by human logistics specialists, operated smoothly. But the destination colonies, now overcrowded and undersupplied due to trade disruptions, struggled to house the refugees. Similar disasters followed across the galaxy. Space elevators experienced structural failures without human maintenance crews. Deep space mining operations suffered equipment breakdowns that alien technicians couldn't repair. Orbital habitats lost life support systems that required human expertise to fix. In the Galactic Council chambers, the mood had shifted from smugness to concern. High Chancellor Morgoth read reports of failing infrastructure and economic collapse with growing alarm. His ancient species had survived by being practical above all else, and the current situation was becoming clearly impractical. Perhaps, he said carefully during a closed session, we should reconsider our position regarding the humans. Counselor Vexthara's energy form flickered with uncertainty. They're trying to pressure us into accepting their demands. This is clearly a coordinated campaign to make us dependent on them. But are we not already dependent? Asked Ambassador Lysina quietly. The economic reports show galactic productivity down 40%. Military effectiveness has decreased by 60%. Scientific research progress has stalled completely in 12 major fields. The numbers were undeniable. Every sector of galactic civilization was suffering without human participation. What the Council had dismissed as minor contributions were revealing themselves to be essential foundations of modern galactic society. They were supposed to come back by now, muttered the representative from the outer colonies, desperate and willing to accept any terms we offered. But there was no sign of human desperation. Intelligence reports from Terran space painted a picture of thriving human colonies, expanding research programs, and successful trade with non-Council species. Humanity was prospering without the galaxy, while the galaxy was collapsing without humanity. For the first time in Council history, the ancient species that ruled the galaxy were beginning to realize they might have made a terrible mistake. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy faced its darkest hour. Ambassador Kang Yu-jin, the only human representative still present in Council space, sat in her small office reading the desperate messages that arrived daily. Each one begged for human assistance with problems that were spiraling beyond alien control. The plague had returned with a vengeance. Dr. Lim Hyun-woo watched the news reports from his research lab on Mars, his face grim as the death tolls climbed. Across multiple star systems, the virus that had seemed defeated 5 years ago had mutated into something far more dangerous. Lim had been working on a universal vaccine protocol when the withdrawal began. His research combined human adaptability with alien biotechnology, creating treatments that worked across species barriers. The project was 60% complete when he received orders to return to Earth. Now that incomplete work mocked him as he watched entire colonies fall to the plague. The alien medical systems, designed for single-species treatment, couldn't handle a virus that jumped between different biological types. Thousands died daily while alien doctors struggled with treatments that had worked before but failed against. The new strain. Dr. Lim, called his research assistant, showing him another urgent message. The Melodian Medical Consortium is offering 50 million credits for your return. They say their hospitals are overwhelmed. Lim shook his head sadly. Send them our sympathy, but explain that human medical personnel are not available for external assignments. The military situation had become a complete disaster. Captain Park Subin read the tactical reports from her fighter squadron base on Titan, watching as the United Pirate Forces conquered system after system. What had started as scattered criminal groups had become a coordinated military threat under a brilliant leader known only as the Red Admiral. Strategist Choi Yun-ji had predicted this exact scenario 2 years ago. In her classified report to the Council, she warned that the galaxy's rigid military thinking made it vulnerable to adaptive enemies. She recommended flexible defense strategies and cross-training between species. The Council had filed her report and forgotten about it. Now Choi was developing defensive strategies for human space while the galaxy burned. The pirates are using human tactical manuals, Park's intelligence officer reported. They studied our combat recordings and adapted our strategies to their equipment. The Council forces can't counter tactics they don't understand. The Red Admiral had done something no alien commander had achieved in centuries, united dozens of pirate groups under a single banner. Using human-inspired strategies of hit-and-run attacks, misdirection, and psychological warfare, the pirates were conquering territory faster than the Council could respond. Traditional alien military doctrine relied on overwhelming force and predictable battle lines. The pirates attacked weak points, retreated when confronted, and struck again where least expected. It was classic human military thinking, turned against the galaxy that had rejected its creators. Trade wars had evolved into actual shooting wars. The economic collapse triggered by broken supply chains had pushed several species toward complete financial ruin. Desperate governments began seizing assets from former trading partners, leading to armed conflicts across dozens of systems. The hegemony invaded 3 Trade Federation colonies, claiming old debts justified the action. The Trade Federation retaliated by blockading hegemony shipping lanes. The Ethereals, facing critical shortages of physical materials they needed despite their claims of transcendence, began demanding tribute from their former trading partners. Without human mediators to negotiate solutions, each conflict escalated beyond control. Species that had cooperated for generations now viewed each other as enemies. The careful diplomatic balance that had maintained galactic peace was crumbling. Environmental disasters struck with increasing frequency. The terraforming failure on New Harmony had been just the beginning. Across the galaxy, ecological systems designed by human engineers began failing without proper maintenance. Paradise 7, a garden world that housed 12 billion beings, lost its atmospheric processors. During a routine maintenance cycle, the backup systems, modified by human engineers to improve efficiency, required expertise that no longer existed in galactic space. The planet's atmosphere began degrading within weeks. Oxygen levels dropped while carbon dioxide increased. The evacuation of 12 billion beings became the largest logistical nightmare in galactic history, complicated by the economic collapse that made organizing relief efforts nearly impossible. In the council chambers, panic had replaced arrogance. High Chancellor Morgoth received reports of system failures, military defeats, and economic collapse with growing desperation. For the first time in his 1,000-year life, he faced problems that Kralian's strength and ancient wisdom couldn't solve. "We must swallow our pride," he declared during an emergency session. "The humans must be contacted immediately." Councillor Vexithera's energy form flickered with distress. This is exactly what they wanted. They engineered this crisis to force us into accepting their demands. "Did they also engineer the plague mutation?" asked Ambassador Lysina pointedly. "Did they sabotage our military strategies? Did they cause the trade wars between species they're not even involved with?" The questions hung in the air like accusations. Slowly, the Council was realizing that humanity hadn't caused these problems. They had simply been the solution to problems the galaxy hadn't realized it had. "Send a formal request for assistance," Morgoth ordered. "Offer reasonable compensation for temporary aid." The message was crafted carefully to avoid any admission of error while requesting human help. It spoke of temporary difficulties and mutual cooperation and generous compensation packages. It was exactly the kind of diplomatic language the Council had always used when dealing with species they considered inferior. Ambassador Kang Yu-jin received the message in her office 3 days later. She read it twice, then composed her response with equal care. "The Terran Federation appreciates the Council's request for assistance," her reply stated. "However, humanity is currently focused on internal development projects and cannot spare resources for external operations. We wish the Council's success in resolving these temporary difficulties." The response was polite, professional, and completely devastating. For the first time in galactic history, the Council had been refused aid by a species they considered junior partners. The economic analysis that followed painted an even grimmer picture. Economist Shin Bora's old reports were pulled from the archives and studied with new urgency. Her predictions about economic interdependency, made years earlier, were proving terrifyingly accurate. Humans had been facilitating 80% of interspecies trade. They provided 60% of emergency medical response. They maintained 50% of critical infrastructure. They mediated 70% of diplomatic conflicts. They contributed 40% of scientific innovation. The galaxy had become dependent on human contributions without realizing it. Like a body that doesn't notice its circulatory system until it fails, galactic civilization was learning what humans had really provided. "We could try economic pressure," suggested one council member desperately. "Cut off trade with human space entirely." Ambassador Lysina's laugh was bitter. "With what trade networks? Half our commercial systems have already collapsed. And the humans are prospering with their new trading partners outside Council space." Reports from human space showed exactly that. Free from Council restrictions, human colonies were expanding rapidly. Human scientists were making breakthrough discoveries without bureaucratic oversight. Human traders were building profitable relationships with independent species who had never joined the Council. Humanity was thriving without the galaxy. The galaxy was dying without humanity. "There must be something they need from us," Vexithara insisted, her energy form dimming with desperation. But the intelligence reports suggested otherwise. Humans had become completely self-sufficient. They had advanced technology, abundant resources, and willing trading partners. They needed nothing the Council could offer except respect and equality. which was exactly what the Council had refused to give them. As the 6th month of crisis deepened into the 7th, even the most stubborn Council members began to accept a painful truth. They had made the worst mistake in galactic history, and humanity was under no obligation to help them fix it. 1 year after the withdrawal, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Empty seats marked where species had withdrawn from the Council entirely. The crystal walls, once bright with bioluminescent translations, now pulsed with dim, worried colors. The galaxy was dying, and everyone knew it. President Seo Wan stepped through the chamber doors with quiet confidence. Behind her walked Fleet Admiral Ryu Jun-seok, his uniform decorated with medals earned in battles the galaxy had forgotten. Economist Shin Bo-ra carried data tablets showing exactly what humanity's absence had cost. Chief Justice Kim Sang-min held legal documents that would reshape galactic law forever. And at the center of the group, Ambassador Han Sol Kim returned to the chamber where his people had been dismissed and insulted 1 year ago. The alien representatives who remained watched the human delegation with very different eyes than before. There was no more laughter, no more dismissive gestures. Too much had been lost for anyone to pretend this was a minor negotiation. High Chancellor Morgoth rose slowly from his stone seat. The ancient Kralian looked older than his 1,000,000 years, worn down by a year of watching his civilization crumble. "President Seo," he said formally, "the Council welcomes your return to these chambers." President Seo nodded politely. "Thank you, Chancellor. Though I should clarify that we are not returning to previous arrangements. We are here to discuss new ones." The distinction was important. The humans weren't coming back as supplicants hoping for acceptance. They were here as equals negotiating with a desperate galaxy. Councillor Vexithera's energy form flickered weakly. The Zephyrian energy being had lost much of her brightness over the past year. "What are humanity's terms?" she asked, her mental voice carrying none of its old arrogance. Fleet Admiral Ryu stepped forward. "Before we discuss terms, let's review the current situation." He activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's condition. Red zones marked systems conquered by pirates. Yellow areas showed regions suffering from economic collapse. Orange sections indicated environmental disasters. Black spots marked colonies that had been completely abandoned. 47 star systems have fallen to the Red Admiral's forces, Ryu stated calmly. Economic productivity has decreased by 70%. Medical emergency response times have tripled. Infrastructure failure rates have increased by 400%. The numbers were devastating, but Ryu continued without emotion. Meanwhile, in human space, we have expanded to 37 new systems. Our economic growth rate is 23% annually. We have formed profitable trade relationships with 46 independent species. Our military has successfully defended all territories without a single loss. The contrast was clear. Humanity had thrived while the galaxy suffered. Economist Shin Bo-ra opened her data tablets. The Council's request for temporary assistance has been reviewed by our economic analysis team. Based on current damage assessments, restoring galactic stability would require a minimum 5-year commitment of human resources. She paused, letting that sink in. The economic value of those resources, calculated at current market rates, equals approximately 4.7 trillion galactic credits. Several alien representatives made sounds of distress. The number was larger than most species' entire economies. However, Shin continued, the Terran Federation is not primarily interested in monetary compensation. We have other requirements. President Seo took control of the presentation. The Terran Federation's terms for renewed participation in galactic affairs are as follows. First, full council membership with voting rights equal to any founding species. No restrictions, no probationary periods, no junior status. Ambassador Lysina nodded slowly. She had argued for this exact arrangement months earlier, but had been overruled by species too proud to admit their mistake. Second, complete autonomy over human internal affairs. No council oversight of human colonies, trade relationships, or internal policies. This was a significant demand. The council had always maintained some authority over member species' internal matters, but they were in no position to negotiate. Third, unrestricted colonization and exploration rights. Human expansion will not be subject to council approval or territorial limitations. Morgoth's stone features showed pain. The galaxy had vast unexplored regions that the Council reserved for future distribution among member species. Giving humans unlimited access was a major concession. Fourth, formal compensation for economic losses suffered during the withdrawal period. This includes lost trade revenues, abandoned infrastructure investments, and economic opportunities missed due to forced isolation. The compensation demand wasn't just about money. It was about acknowledgement that humanity's withdrawal had been justified response to unfair treatment. And fifth, President CO's voice grew harder, a formal public apology from the Galactic Council for discriminatory treatment of humanity over the past 200 years. The chamber fell silent. An apology would be admission that the Council had been wrong. For species that prided themselves on ancient wisdom and superior judgment, this was perhaps the most difficult requirement. Chief Justice Kim stepped forward with his legal documents. These terms are non-negotiable. They represent the minimum. Requirements for renewed human participation in galactic affairs. They will be implemented in their entirety, or humanity will continue developing independently. Counselor Vex Thara's energy form pulsed with desperate frustration. These terms are extensive. Perhaps we could discuss partial implementation, gradual recognition. No, said President CO firmly. The time for gradual recognition has passed. 1 year ago, humanity requested fair treatment and was refused. We adapted to that refusal. The galaxy must now adapt to our response. Fleet Admiral Ryu activated another display showing human military positions. I should mention that Terran fleet assets are currently protecting 17 independent systems from pirate attacks. Our tactical innovations have proven quite effective against the Red Admiral's forces. The implication was clear. Humanity was already providing military protection to species outside the Council. They didn't need the Council's approval to operate in galactic space. Dr. Park Ji-woo, who had documented every insult and dismissive comment during the original negotiations, presented his evidence. The historical record shows a pattern of systematic discrimination against humanity. Our art was called primitive. Our technology was dismissed as crude. Our people were labeled barely evolved primates. He looked directly at Vexithera. These were not isolated comments, but consistent expressions of prejudice that influenced Council policy for 2 centuries. The evidence was overwhelming. The Council's treatment of humanity had been based on bias rather than objective assessment. Hi. Chancellor Morgoth stood slowly, his ancient bones creaking. For a long moment, he stared at the holographic displays showing galactic devastation and human prosperity. Then he spoke with the weight of 1,000,000 years behind his words. The Kralian delegation accepts humanity's terms in their entirety. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Morgoth, the most traditional and proud of the Council leaders, had just surrendered completely. Furthermore, he continued, I formally apologize to the human species for the Council's discriminatory treatment. We judged you by your age rather than your achievements. We dismissed your contributions because they challenged our assumptions. We were wrong. One by one, other representatives stood to echo the apology. Even Vexithara, her energy form dim with humiliation, transmitted her agreement. The vote was unanimous. Humanity's terms were accepted without modification. President CO smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. Then we have an agreement. Human medical teams will deploy immediately to combat the plague. Our engineers will begin infrastructure repairs within the week. Admiral Ryu will coordinate with Council forces against the pirate threat. Relief flooded through the chamber like a physical wave. Help was coming at last, but Han Sol raised his hand. However, there is one final point. To clarify, humanity returns to galactic affairs as an equal partner, not as a savior. We expect to be treated with the respect due to any Council member. The relationship has changed permanently. 5 years later, Ambassador Han Sol Kim, now Secretary General of the Galactic Council, stood in the same chamber where humanity had once been dismissed and insulted. The galaxy thrived around him, stronger than ever before. The plague had been eradicated through human-alien medical cooperation. The pirates had been defeated by innovative Human Council military strategies. Trade flowed freely through networks that respected all species equally. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned a crucial lesson. Cooperation required mutual respect, not charitable tolerance. Humanity had proven that true partnership could only exist between equals, and the galaxy was better for it.